do enjoy her in. But the writing of that character and just the presence of that character that you see, yeah, there she is. Who pretty much resembles any sort of instructor you would meet at a gender studies course. And I do get the comparison now. I never understood the comparison, but yeah, the purple hair. Yeah, and yeah, just the presence and the writing made her one of the most insulting characters in Star Wars. And the problem is with the fact with Admiral Holdo just coming in the Last Jedi. Like I said, the Last Jedi takes place immediately after the Force Awakens, like seconds or freaking hours since the Force Awakens. And in that whole briefing scene from the Force Awakens, where they discuss Starkiller Base, where the hell was this character? She wasn't even mentioned. She wasn't really part of the whole resistance unit during that whole scene in the Force Awakens. So just out of the blue, she comes in to pretty much overshadow Akbar and and to all of our broken hearts, Carrie Fisher with Princess Leia, or General Leia, who again who rests in a coma throughout the entirety of or the majority of the Last Jedi, and she does a spiteful job of becoming Admiral because one of the biggest defenses to this character is that when we first meet her and they have this there's this tension between right here. There's this tension between her and Poe Dameron, played by Oscar Isaacs, where they're pretty much like outgunned and overpowered by the First Order, so they have to hold on to hope in order to survive. But for the most part, Poe, who was demoted from captain to commander, wants to know the plan of what's going to happen next. What plan of action should they take against the First Order? And Hodor, Hodor. Listen to myself. She doesn't really tell him the plan. She doesn't really tell him what the next plan is that they have to do in order to escape the First Order. And so this character beat prompts the inevitable subplot of Poe siding along with Finn and Rose to go on this side mission to recruit a codebreaker from Canto Bight, the casino planet. That way they can take the codebreaker into Snoke's main Star Destroyer ship and somehow hack into the bridge or into the center core and stop this device that's inside the ship that's causing the First Order to track the fleeting resistance in hyperspace, which the idea of tracking a ship in hyperspace defeats the whole purpose of hyperspace. But I won't go into that. But yeah, this character does nothing but antagonize Poe and pretty much, has an insulting nature to the story and to us in the audience, because we as the audience want to know what's going to happen to the Resistance. Are they going to live or die? We should be pretty concerned about it, but instead, Hodor doesn't want to tell the plan, and that leads into Canto Bight, which is a subplot that goes nowhere and ultimately ends in failure. While this whole coup that Poe eventually starts by holding her at gunpoint, so that way they could have Finn and Rose, pull off this mission. It pretty much gets subsided quickly because we learn that Hodor is taking all the Resistance transports to flee from the flagship, so that way they could settle in the one of the old rebellion bases held on Crate. But she doesn't really tell him the plan, so which is bullshit because as a leader, as an admiral of your own military, it is wise and pretty much logical to tell your subordinates, tell your soldiers what the next plan of action should be. And that's pretty much common military that's pretty much common military ethic, where people are saying that, like, well, she's the admiral, she doesn't have to tell him. Well, that's bullshit, because in Return of the Jedi, Admiral Akbar is introduced, and he tells the entire rebellion the assault plan against the second Death Star.
Does have a strong defense mechanism. It is protected by an energy shield, which is generated from the nearby forest moon of Endor. The shield must be deactivated if any attack is to be attempted. Once the shield is down, our cruisers will create a perimeter while the fighters fly into the superstructure and attempt to knock out the main reactor. General Calrissian has volunteered to lead the fighter attack.
Good luck.
And there you go. Like, he simply tells them the entire plan on how to take out the second Death Star, and like, people are gonna say, well, Akbar is also a throwaway character in Return of the Jedi, just a random character. Well, here's Return of the Jedi in context. You see, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi takes years in between the stories. They take place years prior from its predecessor. They take years after its predecessor. So you do get a sense that the rebellion is amassing and forming to, plan another attack against the Empire, and that makes sense because we then lead to seeing leaders like Mothman and Admiral Akbar, who are introduced in Return of the Jedi as all the leaders gather for this final battle against the second Death Star, and that made sense. So Tom Kane knows that the idea of hold the door is pretty stupid, because all it is just a plot contrivance to set up the next thing in The Last Jedi. And as a character, just the idea of Holdor doesn't make any sense, because again, she's just this random woman who clearly could have showed up at any point in The Force Awakens.
So it's like, the forest moon of Endor, woman, it's a trap! All power to the forward shield!
And I was not really thrilled about how they blew him out the side of the ship. I'm like, who's this Holdo woman? Nobody knows this. There's no one's invested in her. Who is she? Why is she saving the fleet?
Sorry guys, I'm having some buffering issues. And look, this tattoo covered tropical shirt wearing like hipster dude just like shuts him up like that, because Disney's watching them, and yeah, it is a trap. It just shows that the idea of Admiral Holdor is a trap in bad storytelling, in bad writing, in bad characterization in The Last Jedi. Now, this is funny, because when I reflect back to when The Force Awakens came out, and I went to Star Wars Celebration that year, there was a lot of promise for new Star Wars films. And we had a lot of people like Anthony Daniels, who plays C-3PO, Simon Pegg, who worked with J.J. Abrams in the Star Trek movies and in Force Awakens, come out and express dissatisfaction to the prequels of how, George wasn't good at directing his actors, or that, it fundamentally and aesthetically did not fit with the original trilogy and to Star Wars. But now, 4 years later, we have 4 Star Wars films, 2 including within the Disney sequel trilogy, and already people are just coming out in distress and in anger and just in a state of disappointment of where Star Wars is at, because not only Star Wars is at a very oversaturated stage with how Disney's branding the franchise out into the mainstream, people are not enjoying these new movies, the new sequel movies. And I went to my coworkers, I went to some friends of mine, and even my family members, and they expressed that The Last Jedi is not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. And it's nice to see that Tom Kane, who has worked under the Star Wars wing, just come out and express his opinion on what the state of Star Wars is, and even talking about the character that he plays in in voiceover acting or voice acting, excuse me, in voiceover work, and it clearly embodies all of our disappointments with the death of Akbar, because Akbar was treated like shit in The Last Jedi. Now, I'm not a huge Akbar fan, but I watched Return of the Jedi a lot when I was in elementary school, and that character stuck out to me in a way, but in a good way though, because as a supporting character, he did lend a hand within the main story. But like with people like with this guy and many others who are just being paid just to ask their questions under Disney and stuff, and just to get people excited, like they're too scared to even like just in a meaningful conversation. I do get that Disney doesn't want any negativity, but let people have their opinions for God's sake, because I don't like The Last Jedi, and Tom Kane doesn't like The Last Jedi, so he's coming out in a very blunt but understanding way though, because we are not happy with the choice of replacing Akbar with Admiral Gender Studies, and yeah, that's where we're at right now. So yeah, in terms of the big picture, I'm just like, it's funny to see that people are not being pleased with the new Star Wars films, and I'm at the fallout myself. I do not care about. I don't even want to go back to rewatch The Force Awakens and stuff, and I would never want to buy The Last Jedi on hard copy Blu-ray. And in terms of The Rise of Skywalker, I again, it's like I said in my trailer discussion, I don't care about what's going to happen next in the story, because the characters and the situations we've seen already aren't that compelling. They're not written in a very intelligent, organic way for us to buy into the plausibility of the logic of Star Wars. It's just like, yeah, they all have become reduced to nothing but $200 million fan fiction. But let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, and subscribe. Do you agree with Tom Kane's opinion on The Last Jedi, or do you think, like some people, he's full of shit, and you're a big fan of The Last Jedi too? But again, I'm not here to criticize anybody if you like The Last Jedi, but it's just weird that people don't see like the mistakes made in the writing for all these movies, and it sucks where we're at right now, where we've become a divisive fan base. And oh, hey Dragon, no, it's cool, man. It's cool to be late, dude. I was late on the party too. I was supposed to start at 5. I had to wait for my roommate to finish cooking. Let me see. Something I'm going to say, it's like they want to treat the sequel trilogy as a reboot series, but at the same time, they spawn a connected cinematic universe. And yeah, that's a thing, though. That's a thing, Dragon. It's not really a reboot series. It's just kind of like whitewashing the original trilogy. Like, they're just using stuff that we've seen already in the original trilogy and just kind of making it into their own. Like, there's no sense of originality. There's no sense of continuity with the original trilogy, which makes this one of the oddest things about Star Wars and the state that it's in right now. And yeah, to connect it to a cinematic universe by making a Star Wars film every year is asinine, because again, the Star